Washington City, August 1814. Today, this place is the powerful capital of the United States. But in 1814, it is still a young and fragile city. Many streets are unfinished. Large, empty fields separate government buildings. The population is small, and the nation itself is barely 3 decades old. Yet within hours, something unthinkable will happen. A foreign army will enter the capital of the United States. Government buildings will burn. The presidential residence will be set on fire. And the young republic will face one of the most humiliating moments in its early history. But at this moment, Washington is still quiet. Clerks work in government offices. Soldiers patrol the streets. Carriages move slowly past the unfinished buildings. Most residents believe the war is far away, but the war is already moving toward them, and very soon, Washington will be burning. At the beginning of the 19th century, Washington City is still more of an ambitious project than a fully developed capital. The government moved here only a few years earlier, and much of the city remains unfinished. Wide avenues stretch across open land where construction has barely begun. Dirt roads cut through fields and patches of forest. In many places, cows and farm animals can still be seen grazing not far from the government buildings. Yet, at the center of this unfinished landscape stand the symbols of a young nation trying to prove itself. The White House, home of the president, rises above the surrounding fields. A short distance away, the Capitol building dominates the skyline, though large parts of it are still under construction. Scaffolding surrounds sections of the structure, and workers continue shaping the stone that will eventually house the American Congress. Between these buildings lie long, quiet roads where carriages pass slowly and government clerks walk to their offices each morning. Washington is not yet the powerful capital the world recognizes today. It is smaller, quieter, more fragile. But these few buildings represent the political heart of the United States. And in the summer of 1814, that heart is about to be tested. The crisis threatening Washington. In 1814 begins 2 years earlier, when the United States enters a conflict that will later be known as the War of 1812. At the start of the 19th century, relations between the United States and Britain are already strained. Britain is locked in a massive war in Europe against Napoleon's empire, and the conflict spills into global trade and naval power. The British Royal Navy dominates the oceans. To weaken their enemies, British forces begin stopping American merchant ships traveling across the Atlantic. Cargo is inspected, trade is restricted, and in some cases, American sailors are taken from their ships and forced into service in the British Navy. This practice, known as impressment, becomes one of the biggest sources of anger in the United States. For many Americans, it feels like a direct violation of national sovereignty. At the same time, tensions grow on the American frontier. Some U.S. leaders believe Britain is secretly supporting Native American resistance against American expansion in territories west of the Appalachian Mountains. Political pressure builds in Washington. Many politicians begin arguing that Britain must be confronted militarily. In June of 1812, the United States officially declares war. But the new nation is not fully prepared for a major conflict. The American army is relatively small. Many military officers lack battlefield experience, and the country's defenses are spread thin across a vast territory. early American attempts to invade British-controlled Canada fail. Battles along the northern border produce mixed results. Naval engagements occur on the Great Lakes and along the Atlantic coast. For the first 2 years of the war, neither side gains a decisive advantage. But by 1814, the global situation begins to change. In Europe, Napoleon is finally defeated. With the war against France ending, Britain can now redirect more troops and resources toward North America. Experienced British soldiers, veterans of long European campaigns, begin crossing the Atlantic. British commanders decide to launch a series of strikes along the American coastline. Their goal is not only military victory. They also want to damage American morale by targeting symbolic locations, ports, shipyards, government centers, and among all possible targets, one stands out above the rest: the capital of the United States, Washington City. During the summer of 1814, a quiet sense of unease begins to spread through Washington City. At first, the rumors arrive slowly. Travelers coming from the Chesapeake Bay speak about British warships moving along the coast. Merchants arriving from nearby towns report seeing soldiers landing on the shores of Maryland. Most residents of the capital struggle to believe it. Washington still feels distant from the front lines of the war. The idea that a British army could march all the way to the nation's capital seems unlikely to many people. But as the days pass, the reports grow more serious. Messengers ride into the city carrying military updates. Newspapers begin printing alarming headlines. British troops are not just sailing along the coast, they are moving inland. Government officials start holding urgent meetings. Soldiers patrol the streets more frequently, and ordinary citizens begin gathering in taverns, markets, and public squares, discussing the same question again and again. How close are the British? No one knows for certain. But the uncertainty alone is enough to change the mood of the city. The capital is no longer calm. It is waiting, listening for the next piece of news that might confirm everyone's growing fear. As the rumors of the approaching British army grow stronger, Washington begins preparing for the possibility of an attack. Government officials meet urgently, trying to understand how serious the threat really is. Messengers arrive with reports from towns along the Chesapeake Bay, describing British troops landing and moving inland. With every new report, the sense of danger becomes more real. Militia units from nearby states are called to defend the capital. Farmers, shopkeepers, and local volunteers arrive carrying muskets, many with little real combat experience. Cannons are positioned along the main roads leading toward the city, especially near the approaches from Maryland. Defensive lines begin forming outside Washington. But the preparations feel rushed. Many soldiers lack training. Commanders disagree about strategy. Supplies are limited, and coordination between different units is confusing. Some officers believe the British Army can still be stopped before reaching the capital, while others quietly fear the defenses may not be strong enough. Despite the uncertainty, the city prepares for battle. Because if the enemy reaches Washington, the young nation's capital will stand directly in their path. On August 24, 1814, the road to Washington runs through a small town called Bladensburg, located just a few miles from the capital. This is where American forces decide to make their stand. Thousands of soldiers gather along the road and fields outside the town. The defenders include regular army troops, artillery units, and large numbers of state militia who have been rushed into position with very little time to prepare. Cannons are placed along the main approach. Defensive lines stretch across open ground. Officers hope that if they can slow the British advance here, Washington might still be saved. But the situation quickly becomes chaotic. The American defensive lines are poorly organized. Many militia soldiers have little battlefield experience. Communication between commanders is confused. When the British Army begins its advance, their soldiers move forward with discipline, supported by artillery fire. The 1st American line fires several volleys. For a brief moment, it seems the defense might hold. Then British rockets and cannon fire crash into the American positions. Smoke fills the air. The noise becomes overwhelming. Some militia units begin to panic. Lines break. Soldiers start retreating across the fields. Within a short time, the organized defense collapses. The retreat becomes so sudden that later historians give the battle a humiliating nickname, the Bladensburg Races, because many American soldiers ran so quickly from the battlefield, and with the defenders gone, the road to Washington lies completely open. News of the defeat spreads rapidly through Washington. Government officials realize the British Army could arrive at any moment. Urgent decisions must be made. Important documents are gathered. Treasury funds are moved. Some government workers begin evacuating. Residents rush through the streets carrying belongings. Wagons leave the city heading into the countryside. The atmosphere becomes tense and chaotic. Everyone knows what may happen next. The capital is no longer safe, and the British Army is getting closer. On the afternoon of August 24th, 1814, the British Army finally reaches the outskirts of Washington. The road to the capital is now open after the American defeat at Bladensburg. Smoke from the battlefield still hangs faintly in the air as disciplined columns of British soldiers march toward the city. For many of them, the sight of the American capital is surprising. Washington is not yet a dense metropolis. Large open fields separate many of the government buildings. Dirt roads stretch between scattered houses, workshops, and public structures. But despite its unfinished appearance, everyone understands what this city represents. It is the political heart of the United States. As the British troops advance into the city, resistance is minimal. Most American forces have already withdrawn after the chaotic retreat from Bladensburg. Government officials, soldiers, and many residents have fled to the surrounding countryside. The streets feel strangely quiet. Shutters are closed. Doors are locked. Only a few frightened residents remain, watching from windows as the red-coated soldiers move through the capital. British officers quickly begin identifying key targets. Their goal is not to occupy Washington permanently. Their mission is to cripple the American government's infrastructure, to destroy the buildings that symbolize the authority of the young republic. Soon, orders are given. Government buildings will be burned. And as evening approaches, British soldiers begin moving toward the most recognizable structure in the city, the presidential residence, the building that will later become known around the world as the White House. As evening approaches, on August 24, 1814, British soldiers move through the quiet streets of Washington. The city is nearly abandoned. Government officials, soldiers, and many civilians have already fled after the defeat at Bladensburg. The British Army reaches the presidential residence, the building that will later become known around the world as the White House. At this time, it is still a relatively new structure, completed only a few years earlier. Its bright white walls stand out against the darkening sky, a symbol of the young American government. Inside, the rooms are mostly empty. Before fleeing the city, servants and officials rushed to remove important items, documents, and some furniture. One of the most famous objects saved that day is a large portrait of George Washington. But the building itself cannot be saved. British officers order the structure to be burned as retaliation for American forces destroying government buildings in Canada earlier in the war. Soldiers begin carrying wooden furniture into the rooms. Curtains are torn down. Tables and chairs are piled together. Soon, flames are lit. At first, the fire burns slowly, creeping along wooden floors and climbing the drapes. But within minutes, the flames grow stronger. Fire spreads through the halls and upper floors. The night sky above Washington begins to glow orange. From a distance, residents watching from the surrounding hills can see thick smoke rising above the Capitol. Nearby, other government buildings are also burning. The Capitol, the Treasury, and several public offices. For the young United States, the sight is shocking. Only a few decades after independence, the nation's capital is in flames. The White House, the heart of the American presidency, is now burning in the night. By the morning after the attack, Washington looks like a wounded city. Smoke still rises from the blackened remains of government buildings. Walls stand without roofs. Windows are shattered. The once proud structures of the young Capitol now appear scarred and broken. The Capitol building is heavily damaged. Large sections of the interior are destroyed. Government offices are reduced to charred ruins. The presidential residence, the White House, is left burned and hollow. Its stone walls remain standing, but the inside has been completely devastated by fire. Citizens slowly begin returning to the city, walking carefully through streets still covered with ash and debris. Many are shocked by the destruction. Only days earlier, Washington had felt calm and distant from the violence of war. Now, the war has passed directly through its center, yet something unexpected happens. Instead of abandoning the Capitol, American leaders decide to rebuild it. Repairs begin within months. Workers clear rubble. Architects begin restoring damaged structures. The White House is reconstructed, its burned walls repaired and repainted. The attack becomes a powerful symbol for the young nation, a reminder that even the Capitol could fall, but also that the country was determined to recover. Washington had burned, but the city would rise again. What you've just seen is a historical reconstruction of Washington City in 1814, during the dramatic days when the British Army captured and burned parts of the American capital. The streets, buildings, and atmosphere shown in this video were recreated using AI reconstruction technology, allowing us to visualize historical events with incredible realism. If you want to experience more historic events recreated through AI reconstruction, subscribe for the next journey into the past.